GCW's The Art of War Games 2025 was a show that falls into that category of wrestling events where nothing goes wrong, but nothing really elevates it beyond what you expect from a typical independent show. You watch it, you get through it, and there are no disasters, but when it's over, you're not telling people they need to see it. That's where this show lands. The opener was Tony Deppen versus Terry Yaki, and they went out there and did a 3.25-star match. This was a high-paced match with spots. The crowd was into it, and they did some brutal apron work, including a superplex on the ring apron and a double foot stomp on the apron. They threw in those destroyers in there as well. And I thought the pacing worked here. Terry Yaki ended up winning, and this is exactly what you want from an opener. You set the tone, you get the crowd engaged, and you don't try to steal the show, but you also get your stuff off. They accomplish all that here. When you start a show like this, you're in good shape because the crowd is warmed up and ready for what comes next. The problem is what comes next. KJ Orso versus man like DeReiss, which was 2.25 stars. And this match was just okay. Now, this was clearly a match designed to get Orso back on track as a heel after his cage match with Sam Stackhouse, so the wrestling here took a little bit of a back seat to the character work. It got a bit goofy at times, and the only real highlight was a nice ocean suplex variation by DeReiss. I thought the pacing here was okay, and Orso won pretty much with a small package. Now, sometimes you need these matches on a card to move stories forward and accomplish just something specific with a character, and that's all fine. But as a standalone wrestling match, it was just there. The issue is when you follow a solid opener with this, you start to lose that momentum a bit. The crowd was engaged after the first match, and now you're given something that's more about story than action. It's not a show killer, don't get me wrong, but it's not really helping you either. Then you get to the 6-way scramble with Lucky 13, Joey Janela, Will Kroos, Austin Luke, and Ryan Clancy and Logan Cavazos. And this was a 3.75-star match and the best match on the show. This is what a GCW scramble should be all the time. It was chaotic, everyone got their spots in, and the execution here was good. That's the key with these scrambles. You can have all the chaos you want, but if guys are missing spots and it looks sloppy, the whole thing just falls apart. Everyone here got their moments, but Will Kroos was the star here. He hit a Spanish fly, he hit a pounce that sent Clancy into the second ring, and the crowd chanted, "Please come back" to him. Lucky, on the other hand, he hit a destroyer from the top, and the crowd was into this throughout. Janela ended up winning with a package pile driver, and pretty much like I said, this was a really good match. When scrambles work like this, they're great additions to a card. The problem for the overall show is that a 3.75-star match, while good, is not a match that's going to make people talk about the show for weeks or months. So it's not a classic, but it's the best thing on the card. And it's a very good scramble, but it's not transcendent. After that, you had Beastman versus one called Manders in a hardcore match, which was 3.25 stars. Pretty good match. They brawled through the crowd, used chairs and doors, and worked a mix of striking, brawling, and power moves. The highlight to me was a fallaway slam on chairs into the crowd. The pacing I thought here was fine. Manders won with a lariat forearm variation through a door, and I thought this was a solid hardcore match where they did the brawling and they used those weapons, and they gave the fans what they came to see. These two guys know how to work this style, and they executed it right. Again, nothing wrong with it, but nothing that elevates the show beyond competent. Then you got Otis Cogar versus Emersyn Jayne in a Nick Gage Invitational 10 qualifying death match, which to me was 3 stars, and it was better than what I expected. The expectations was that this would have been average at best or somehow borderline good, but they actually exceeded that. The pacing here I thought was key. They didn't drag it out, and they hit their spots. And they used the basic hardcore stuff beyond the light tubes. Jayne hit a Spanish fly, which I thought stood out, and Cogar ended up winning with a Uranagi on light tubes. Sometimes when you go into these deathmatch qualifiers and you're not sure what you're going to get, especially when you have different experience levels, they put together something solid here. The pacing, I thought, kept on moving, and they didn't try to do too much. And they gave you enough to make it worth watching. When a match exceeds expectations like this, it helps the show. But again, 3 stars is not moving the needle for overall quality. The main event was Team GCW versus Team JCW in a War Games match. And despite me thinking this is probably the worst feud of the year, this ended up being a 3-star match, better than what I expected here as well. The expectation was that this would not be good at all. However, they added the glass gimmick to the match last minute, and that did help a little bit. The eliminations I thought were pretty solid with the glass spots. The structure was a mix of building and being chaotic throughout. And the pacing I thought was fine. Mr. Danger did an overhead throw plunge on top of the cage, through the glass, to the ring, which was an insane spot. Madman Pondo, he had a superplex on Danger through glass for an elimination. And Shane Mercer, he shook a scaffold and made Drew Parker fall off onto a barbed wire glass bed. And Matt Tremart ended up being the sole survivor and won it for Team GCW with a splash on light tubes. So when you add the glass element last minute like that, it changes what the match can be, and they used it well enough to make this work and be better than expected. Here's the issue with this show overall. When you look at it, you have 6 matches. The average star rating is right around 3 stars. That's not bad, right? That is actually pretty consistent. But consistency at a middle level doesn't make for a memorable show. You have one match that broke 3.5 stars, and that was the Scramble match at 3 3/4. You have one match that was below 2.5 stars, and that was the Orso match at 2 1/4 stars. Everything else is in that 3-star to 3 1/4 star range. The main event, which should be your peak, delivered just 3 stars. That's kind of underwhelming for a show closing gimmick match with the War Games name attached to it. The show needed either the Scramble to be a true classic, or maybe at around the 4 1/4, 4.5 star range, or at least needed the main event to deliver at that level. It pretty much got neither. What it got was a Scramble that was very good for what it was, and a main event that exceeded low expectations, but still only hit 3 stars. When your best match is 3 3/4 stars and your main event is 3 stars, you have a show that's fine, but not special. The other thing is there were no disasters, which matters. When you have a show with a 1.5 star match or something that's painful to sit through, that drags everything down. This show didn't have that. The worst match was 2 1/4 stars, and while that's not good, it's not a disaster. It's just a match that exists for story purposes and doesn't deliver much in the ring. That's different from a match that's actively bad and makes you want to turn it off. But the flip side here is there were no true highs either. No match that you're going to remember in 6 months. No match where you're going to be telling people that you have to see it. The Scramble was fun, but fun doesn't make a show must-see. The War Games match had some crazy spots with glass, but crazy spots doesn't make a 3-star match into a classic. So when you add it all up, this is a show that does what it needs to do. It gave you some action, gave you some storyline progression with the Orso match, gave you a solid Scramble, and it gives you some hardcore and deathmatch content that GCW audiences expect. But it doesn't give you anything beyond that. It doesn't give you a reason to own it or watch it again or recommend it to someone who didn't see it live. So this is a passable show if you watch it. I don't think you'll hate it, but you'll watch it, not hate it, and then move on. This gets a 7.0 out of 10.